So thank you, Vitaly, and thank you for having me. So my name is Rémi Parmentier, and I go by the nickname HTML online. And I am French, and I am what you'd call an email developer. And some of you might remember me because 3 years ago, I actually already had the chance to be on this stage to talk about HTML emails. And I ended my talk with a surprise announcement with the launch of the website caniemail.com. So it's a very similar website to caniuse.com, but this time it's for email developers. So it tells you which HTML and CSS features are supported on which email clients. And I've been maintaining this site for the past 3 years, and a lot of things sure happen in the emails world, including this thing which happened just last month, where Microsoft had to push a quick fix to Outlook on Windows because apparently Uber receipt emails were crashing Outlook. And the official reason for Microsoft was because the emails were used complex tables, which is hilarious to me because the only reason we use table in the first place in emails is because Microsoft Outlook doesn't really understand anything else for layouts because it uses Word as a rendering engine. And so this really falls at the top of my favorite examples in the category of email clients that break because of a thing they force you to do in the first place. But one of the most important novelty in the past 3 years is the debut of dark modes. It was all over the news, at least for tech news. And from macOS to iOS, Android and Windows, every operating system now features what we call a dark mode option. So the way this usually looks is that you go to your operating system preferences, and you can check whether you prefer a light mode or a dark mode. And then it's up to any application installed on your computer or on your phone to adjust its own interface with a darker color scheme. And of course, this also applies to browsers and websites, and to email clients and to HTML newsletters. But as you might expect, there are a few twists in emails that make this a tiny bit more complicated. And in November 2020, email analytics tool Litmus estimated that 36% of iPhone users were opening their emails while in dark modes. So this is really kind of a big thing. And just out of curiosity, who here, by show of hands, uses a dark mode either on their phone or on their computer? Yeah, so that's quite a lot of people, you nerds. So yes, in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to be shining the light on HTML email dark modes. And I'm going to share with you 5 tips to make email better in dark modes. And I'm saying modes plural, because there's not one dark mode, but there's pretty much as many as there are email client families. So in this talk, I'm going to focus on the big 3, which are Apple Mail, Outlook, and Gmail. So my first tip is to do something. Just don't stay there, your arms crossed, and think that dark mode is not for you. You don't need dark mode for your brand. This is not something you're interested in, because you don't have the choice. If you don't code for dark mode specifically, email clients will force dark mode for you. And so every email clients have something we call forced dark mode. And so if you don't do anything, your emails can look like hell. And I mean this literally. If you take this example from a web host, it's a super cute email, lovely colors, illustration, really cute llamas, I love them. But here's what it looked like in Gmail forced dark mode. So yeah, not really the same vibe here. And the "we missed you" feels kind of, yeah. We missed you. So To be fair, Gmail, since this was in the first year, I think in 2019, in the first year of dark mode in Gmail, Gmail since adjusted its forced dark mode algorithm and no longer does this sort of thing, but there's still some color changes and surprises. Email developer Alice Lee wrote a fantastic guide on Litmus about forced dark mode in email clients and what you can expect from email clients, so I really recommend you to read this. And for some of them, like Apple Mail on macOS, there are really easy tweaks to avoid getting, for example, a white color turned into black. And this is really stupid because the trick is instead of using white, you just use a white with a little bit of gray. So instead of using #FFF, you use #FFFE, which is really something naive to do. But my biggest recommendation, and perhaps the most important point of this talk, is do not fight dark mode. Instead, try to embrace it. Dark mode is a user preference, the same way that someone might want to increase their font size or read your content on a small device. That's just a user's preference. It's not up to you to decide what is good or what is not. It's up to the users. So do not try to keep a light email in dark mode. And one part of this do something first step is actually to test. So of course you can test your emails on your own devices, but there are really handy tools online made by email developers where you can simulate what your email would look like in such a dark mode. So there's this one by ProofJump. And there's also a new option in the email coding tool, Parcel.io, which now allows you to switch between light and dark mode and have a simulation of forced dark mode as well. So this is really handy to get a glimpse, get a clue of what your emails look like in dark mode. Now, my second tip is to use transparent images as much as you can. We often use a lot of images inside emails, but if you don't use transparent images, it might look a little less clean. So take, for example, this email from Epic Games for the game Fortnite. It's beautiful in light mode, but if you look at this in the forced dark mode in Outlook.com, you can now see how every image was sliced up, and it's not looking really good anymore. So here, it would have been really great to use transparency for all transparency for all the borders in the images. But try to be thoughtful about this, because here's another example, and you've got these social icons at the bottom. They look okay in light mode, but if you look at this email in Outlook.com forced dark mode, then they become almost invisible because they were a gray transparent and now on a gray background. So in this case, I would recommend to actually include the white background inside the image, inside the circles, so that it's still visible whether you're in light or dark mode. And this is a fun trick that I really like to use on all my emails. It's to actually add an outline to transparent content, especially when it's text. So from the same email, we see that we've got the same problem with the logo on the top, where it's no longer, it's barely readable in Outlook.com dark mode. So what I would do in such a case is I would take this image, go back to Photoshop, and add an outline outside the image with using the same color as the background color where this image is visible in light mode. So here we've got this green mint color, and I'm using this. So now once I'm back in the email, this outline is not visible in light mode because it's the same color as the background, but once you view the email in dark mode, it's now visible, and you can still read the contents. So this is something I've been using quite a lot in all of my emails, like in this newsletter from France called Bulletin. So I've applied a really fat white border here, not visible in light mode because the background is already white, and then revealed when viewed on a darker automatic background. And same here for this newsletter I had a chance to work on for Le Monde, where there was these little icons for users. And so in dark mode, I've added an outline and also a fill inside the icons to add a better look. And so now my images look great, either in light or dark mode. Now, of course, we don't have to go through forced dark modes only, and we can be more proactive and actually code things for dark mode. And we can use the dark mode media query, which is something relatively new in the past few years, which appeared at the same time as dark mode in operating systems. So it looks like this. You write at media prefers color scheme dark, and so every CSS rules inside it will allow you to target the dark mode specifically. So, for example, you can add all your styles and change your background color to black and your text color to white. Browsers have adapted to this, and they include handy tools among dev tools. So this is in Firefox, which is my favorite dev tools to test dark mode, because they included these really nice little icons with a sun and a moon, and you can easily swap between your dark styles and light styles to see how your web page or your email works. Chrome also has one, but it's really more complicated. You need to go to the More Tools option, Rendering tab, and then you need to find the Emulate Media Features Prefers Color Scheme, and then you can switch between the two. So that's not quite as handy. But one thing that Chrome has is that it has this Enable Automatic Dark Mode option, which kind of gives you the same vibe as what forced dark mode do in email clients. So that's really interesting to test as well. One thing I love about the dark mode media query is that you can use it to swap images between light and dark modes. So if you have a simple image right here, that's your image for light mode, you can use a picture element and add a specific source with a different image for dark mode, and then use the media attributes and use the same media query, prefers color scheme dark, and then this will automatically switch between a light and dark mode image in browsers and in compatible email clients. So one thing about all of this is that if you want to try this in Apple Mail, you will need to use this meta tag. So the supported color scheme meta tag with the value light and dark, which indicates that your email or web page supports both light and dark theme. And there's no reason at all that this is mandatory, because on the web you can do dark mode styles without this, but apparently Apple Mail requires this. So for Apple Mail 12 you need the meta version, and for Apple Mail 13 and above you need the CSS version with the color scheme property. So that's just one small hack, but once you've done this, it works well. Well, it works well in compatible email clients, because unfortunately for now, the dark mode media query works well in Apple Mail, in macOS and iOS. It works in Outlook on macOS, iOS, and in Outlook.com, but other than that, not really for now. So let's see, we are left with forced dark modes there and not a lot of options. And one thing that's been really bothering me is that in webmail, Outlook.com, you've got this little icon with the moon crescent at the top that lets you switch between light and dark mode. But because we're in the webmail, if you use the dark mode media query, and then if your operating system is set in dark mode, you cannot switch back using the button from Outlook.com, because since your styles for dark mode are always there, and your operating system is always in dark mode, then there's no difference computed there. So I went on a quest and wondered if it was possible to actually find some way to target this button from Outlook.com. And so this is my tip number 4, is to use custom styles for Outlook.com to tweak the rendering and make your emails properly react to Outlook.com dark mode and dark mode switch button. So let's say we've got this little piece of code. So we've got a style tag. We've got a main wrapping div with a background color of white and a text color of black. And then we've got some contents inside. So if we were to send this to Outlook.com, the first thing that Outlook.com would do is rename the class name by adding an X_ prefix to any class name. So this is actually a good practice. Webmails often do this, and they should do this, because this prevents me, the sender of the emails, to write styles for the interface of the webmail, since it's just a web page. And yes, the pun is totally intended here with the X-Files, because not only was the X-Files my favorite TV show growing up, but also it taught me the only words I can possibly speak in German to this day.
Ich habe keine Unruhe.
So, ich habe keine Unruhe, but maybe a little bit when coding emails. So, if you were to continue viewing this email, this code in Outlook.com in dark mode, Outlook.com will change the colors defining the style. So our white background becomes gray with the 333 value, and our text color of black becomes a light gray. And one thing that's become really handy is that Outlook.com also adds 2 custom data attributes that they name data OGSB and data OGSC, and that is for original style background and original style color, which is just an attribute that they use to save the original value that there was in your code before the dark mode switch. And this is going to be very useful, because we are going to be able to use this data attribute to actually target Outlook.com whether when you're in light mode or dark mode. So if we take back our little media query here, the first step to make your emails react more properly in Outlook.com will be to exclude Outlook.com from reading these media query styles. So what I use here is a not pseudo selector, and then inside I'm using an attribute selector targeting elements that have a class starting with X_. Now, because Outlook.com is the only client that prefix class names by X_, this will work in anything but Outlook.com, because once you're in Outlook.com, since the class starts by X_, this will not be applied. And then the second step is to actually duplicate the styles that I need. And instead of having them in a media query, I will just prefix the CSS selectors by the data OGSB attributes, which is added by Outlook.com only when viewed in dark mode. So this is really the kind of the hacks that we use in the email development world to make emails better in dark mode. And the final tip I've got for you today is actually a really fun one. We're going to need to fix Gmail sometimes, because Gmail is really a bad student in the dark mode area, because not only it doesn't support the dark mode media query, but it also doesn't have any sort of trickery or targeting hacks to differentiate light and dark mode. And not only that, but Gmail is also sometimes very terrible at its own forced dark mode. For example, take this email, which already has a dark color scheme. So we are in light mode, but the email is dark by default. And Gmail will still try to invert it and then turn it light, which is kind of counterproductive and really not useful and not respectful of user preferences. So that's a bad thing from Gmail, but the worst part is that now the green button becomes really hard to read because we have got a dark text on a dark background color, and so that's not helpful. Here's another example from Google themselves. So you can see that all the black backgrounds were turned to white, and the blue buttons text was turned from white to black. And this is also one of my favorite categories of things because it's from emails from tech companies that look worse in that same company email client. Like, can't you just test in your own tools? But one good thing about Gmail is that, weirdly, it supports CSS blend modes. So blend modes is that thing in Photoshop that makes your developer hate you because it now becomes almost impossible to export an individual layer. But it's all about blending colors from overlapping layers. So if you have two different layers or elements overlapping each other, you can use blend modes with a different value, a different algorithm applied, and you will get different interesting results. So I kept wondering, since we cannot target Gmail in any way via media query or custom attributes, can't we do something using blend modes to try to make emails better for Gmail in dark mode? And so I found a solution that is very specific to a very narrow problem, but it works really well. And the idea would be to, in this exact case that we saw earlier, would be to try to maintain the same background color and the same white color. So I'm going to show you how it works. So the first step, if we wanted to code a button like this or a small element like this, we would use simply an element. I used a div here, which seems wrong. Probably should have used an A. But the important part is that it only has two styles, just a color for the text, so white text, and a background color, which is green here. So if we were to view this in dark mode in Gmail, what Gmail will do is invert the text color and change the background color to a different value. Now, one thing really interesting about Gmail is that it supports linear gradient in CSS, and it doesn't change them in dark mode. So if we want to force our initial color for light mode, we can do this using a background image and linear gradients with just the same colors twice, so it's just a flat color. And if you were to view this in Gmail dark mode, you would see that the text color and the background color was inverted, but not the linear gradient color. So we are able to maintain our background color this way. So if we're back at our button, when we view this piece of code, we now get the same exact background color in both situations, in light and dark mode, but we still have to find a fix for our text color, which is turned to black in dark mode. So this fix will involve two blend modes, and I'm just going to write them down for now, and then we'll get through it. So the first one is going to be a difference blend mode with a black background, and then the second one is going to be a screen blend mode. So I tell them in this order because usually blend modes are applied inside out. So they will start from the most inner element in our HTML code and then apply to the wrapping ones. So now with this code, our button kind of looks like this. We have 3 different layers, and the 2 first ones with the blend modes applied have a black background in light mode, but Gmail turns this into a white background, and our white text in light mode is turned by Gmail into a black text. So the first blend mode that we apply is the difference blend mode. So the difference blend mode, its definition is that it subtracts the darker of the 2 constituent colors from the lighter color. Yeah, I didn't get that either. So mathematically, the result of such a blend mode between the backdrop color, so that's CB here, and the source color, so that's the most frontmost layer, so that's CS here, that's the absolute value of the difference between the backdrop color and the source color. So let's try to apply this to our little button. So we've got our source color, our source backdrop first, and our backdrop second. Now, with this, the white text becomes the result of the absolute value of a black color minus a white color. So that should do a minus white color, but that doesn't make sense. So as the absolute value just gives us a white color. So our white text stays white. So far, so good. And then for black backgrounds, we are doing the same calculation. So then it's just black minus black, which is still black. So we don't get really any difference in light mode, which so far so good. What's interesting is that what's happening in dark mode. Now, because we have a white background, things are going to be able to change. So the black text now become the result of the difference between white minus black. So that's going to be white. And for the background, the white background becomes the difference of white minus white. So that turns black. So this is really interesting because now, just with this blend mode, we are able to get to the same result in both viewing conditions. So both in light and dark mode, we just have this button with white text on a dark background. So now we need to apply a second blend mode so that our button will be able to stay white text on a green background. So for this second blend mode, we're going to use a screen blend mode, which by its definition multiplies the complements of the backdrop and source color values, then complements the results. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me, but the formula is a little bit clearer, and we can expand this formula by simply doing this calculation. So that's the backdrop color plus the source color minus the product of the background times the source color. So if we try to apply this to our little buttons here, we've got the same thing on both modes, light and dark. So all we need to do is do this calculation. So for our white text, we do the calculation of the green plus the white minus the green. So it just gives us the white color, which is perfect. This is what we intended to do. And then for the black background, we are going to apply the same calculation. So this time it's the green background plus the black background minus black. And so that just gives us the green background. So voila, this is how we can maintain our colors with a single piece of code for Gmail that doesn't support dark mode media query or anything. So we would need to add a few more tweaks to make sure that this only applies to Gmail and not other email clients. But I'm not going to go through this during this talk. But if you're interested in this, you can read the full article that I had posted in my blog last year. So just as so this was my final tip, but I just as a small bonus one. It's the gradient trick for Outlook on Windows. We kind of have some similar issues on Outlook on Windows, where it doesn't support the dark mode media queries, of course, because it uses Word's rendering engine, and it doesn't have any sorts of custom attributes. So we're left with the forced dark mode, and sometimes it does it wrong, where it will invert some colors that were already dark. So email developer Nicole Merlin wrote this fantastic guide that I'd really invite you to read, and it's kind of the same approach, where she's using, instead of blend mode, she's using gradients for Outlook to try to fix this and maintain a white color. Luckily, to end with a really positive note and some good news, in this year, it's been announced by Microsoft that there's a new Outlook coming on Windows, and it's actually currently in beta, and it uses Edge WebView. So that's the same rendering engine from Edge based on Chromium, and so it no longer uses Word's rendering engine. So this is still in beta, but this is really exciting because Outlook has been using Word's rendering engine since 2007, so that's been more than 15 years. And so finally, maybe we're seeing the light, the light at the end of the tunnel, because this means that we'll be able to drop tables and use more advanced things for Outlook on Windows. So it really depends on how well this thing is adopted and pushed by Microsoft, but this is really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to the future to try more hacks and more fun things in email clients. So that's it for me. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions.
Thank you, Remy.
Thank you.
Wow, we have so many questions that came up here, Remy. Questions about the meaning of life as well. I think one question that came up, how do you sleep at night?
Really well, yeah.
Yeah, so really well.
Well, apart from everything that's going on in the world,
Yes,
but
yes.
it's not emails that keep me up at night.
Yeah, but this linear gradient hack, I don't know. It feels like, so I'm just wondering just how much experimentation or thinking or playing with Gmail or anything else at this point is required to come up with this?
Actually, I didn't come up with a linear gradient hack, and the fun thing is that because there's such a growing community of email developers, these kind of things get shared really easily, and you get aware of it pretty early if you follow things on Twitter, or on Slack, or things like this. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. One question that's related to that, though. Aren't hacks like this prone to break the email in the future clients a lot?
Yes, that's actually part of the job. But one thing that's different in emails than websites is that you send your email at one instant, and then it's done. Sure, people can go back to emails years later, but that's not the most common case. So you really focus on the present moment and the day you're sending your email. So what matters is what works now. And it's also part of the job to actually be aware of what changes, because sometimes things might change suddenly and break your emails that even if you don't use hacks like this, your email can break because email clients can change suddenly. So.
Right. There's also an interesting question that came up about differences. Are there any differences or significant differences between apps and web clients, like Outlook versus Outlook.com, Gmail versus Gmail.com, Yahoo Webmail?
Yeah, they usually are, because a webmail really has to be more restricting for security, because if you were to allow any styles or any JavaScript, for example, it could be a disaster in a webmail, because then you'd be able to grab content from the email inbox or things like that. So yeah, usually webmails are more strict, but sometimes they just align along different, even with apps. So, for example, what we're seeing is that the the mobile apps of Outlook use pretty much the same filtering and parsing algorithms than Outlook.com on the web.
Right.
And this is actually a good thing because this brings to more consistency when you're testing. You can get a similar result whether you're testing on Outlook on iOS than on Outlook.com.
Right.
So any day I would prefer consistency even with low support than just wild differences that make no sense.
Right. It's also, I think that many of us are thinking about HTML email being this extremely outdated technology that we have to use every now and again. I know just how much you love HTML email. But now that if at some point eventually Outlook is moving to, away, let's say, from Word rendering engine, do you feel like pretty much building or designing designing HTML emails will be very similar in some ways, like designing websites, or is it still a very different beast?
I think it'd still be a very different beast because we have such a variety of email clients. It's not like on the web where Chrome holds 95% of the market share, and you just code for Chrome and you're done. Here, pretty much every email client has a small percentage of market share, and there's such a huge number of small email clients as well, just not from Google or Outlook, but just niche email clients.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe it's also related to that. I'm wondering, so dark mode is kind of one part of the story, but accessibility in email in general, right? I mean, especially when it comes to tables, is there anything, like where does accessibility fit in? Are those emails, let's say, with tables accessible by default, or is it because you don't have any JavaScript, let's say, and you don't have a very limited amount of CSS, or is it still some work that needs to be done?
So no, tables, it's wrong to use tables for layout. We learned this 20 years ago on the web, but in the email, we don't really have the choice because of Outlook on Windows. So the thing that email developers do is add the role equals presentation attributes on tables, which helps screen readers to pick up that this is not a data table and it's more a layout table. But sure, that's a really big problem, and I think that's also what's encouraging companies like Microsoft to move away from Word is that they know that it will improve things for everyone if they do this.
Right, but also at the same time, we see still a lot of emails which include inline styles.
Yeah.
And sometimes I can see people being really afraid of using floats because of the old bugs and stuff. So when you, I know it's a very long answer probably that would be required for that, but when you start building HTML email today, what would be your workflow? Do you start with divs and then you kind of plug in tables inside for Outlook?
Yeah.
Or what would be your process?
Yeah, it's kind of the way I do it nowadays is I try to code it with divs, and so I still use inline styles because even for you, most email clients would support style tags, which is good for responsive and necessary for media queries and such. Whenever you reply or forward an email, most email clients will remove any style tag. So in this condition, if you want your email to look good when replying or forwarding, you kind of need to inline them, and it's better like this.
Yeah. Well, there's more and more questions are coming in, I think, at this point. So maybe just two more and then we should be done. How quickly do email clients update themselves? Is it like kind of continuously rolled out, like Gmail updates coming in every week or so, or is it? How does it work? Is it like, for example, similar to Chromium?
No, it's a much slower pace, and I think the biggest companies like Gmail and Outlook are really trying to be conservative with what they allow in the email clients because it's really important. Emails are really what touches to everyone's privacy and the most personal information. So if they were to find out that suddenly some specific CSS property could make a request to a third-party content and suddenly get some content out of the inbox, this will be a real disaster for these webmails and their users. So they're really trying to be more conservative. So just as a small clue of the time scales we have in email, Gmail only allows responsive code and media queries in 2016. So if you consider that the iPhone was the introduction of responsive design and such, it almost took them 10 years to really allow.
10 years is a lot of time.
Yeah, that's a long time, and so that's kind of the scale we are speaking of in the email was so.
Right. So given this time scale, would you say that everybody in the audience watching us now, offline and online, should switch their careers and move into HTML email development?
I would encourage you to do so because it's really fun.
And if they do, what would be a good first step? Because I heard there are some incredible, fantastic communities about HTML email also on Slack.
Yes.
Because you told me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, because I hope you will join. No, yes, there is the Email Geeks Slack and
Email
the
Geeks.
Email Geeks hashtag on Twitter as well, which are really fantastic community full of really nice people.
Yeah, and also very interesting hacks.
Yeah.
Sure. So if you're into this, this is going to be something for you, maybe. All right. Well, Remi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for.
If you have any, all right.
Thank you.
Oh.